Good evening from Red Lodge, Montana. I'm Jamie Schectman, I'm the CEO of Mountain Riders Alliance, and I'd like to welcome you all here this evening, and also for those tuning in live on cyberspace. Just a couple of things before we get started. There's a raffle for those of you here that are interested. They're $5 tickets, and we have over $3,000 in prizes. New skis, snowboards, panda, poles, which are bamboo, and some other great prizes. So thanks to all of our sponsors. And then also we're having a beer reception after this symposium at Kish Photography in downtown, 22 Broadway, right downtown. So come on by and have an adult beverage, and we'll talk more about skiing. All right, anyways, we were gonna show the Last Tracks movie, but we had, as I mentioned, some technical difficulties with the audio, so gotta be flexible in this business. So we're gonna switch over and get started with our symposium tonight. So about Mountain Riders Alliance, we founded our organization in 2010 because we were growing concerned about the direction that the ski industry has taken. Skier visits are basically flat, and you see this corporatization occurring and a lot of ski resorts being gobbled up by private equity firms and corporations. Meanwhile, the smaller community, independent, soulful, unique, funky, authentic ski areas are endangered species. So we founded our organization to help them to work together and to give them a voice and believe that they are the soul of the sport, and without them, the big resorts suffer too. So that's a little background on Mountain Riders Alliance. So we decided that it was time to create our own annual event. So this is the first annual Summer Shred Fest. And as part of that, we wanted to create an educational piece. We didn't want it to just be a competition and a gathering, but to bring education to and awareness to community ski areas and their role and their importance. A little bit more on community ski areas. We did a survey back in 2014, and that survey showed that over 70% of skiers and snowboarders start at mom and pop ski areas. Mom and pops, typically under 1,600 vertical feet, typically under 100,000 skier visits. So really, these smaller skiers are really the gateway drug, pardon the pun, before you graduate to the bigger resorts. We talked about skier participation being flat, and there's challenges facing these community ski areas. Besides climate change, which face all ski areas, aging infrastructure is a big deal. Most community ski areas were started in the 60s or 70s, so they're all reaching their sort of life expectancy of their fixed grip lift, and a lot of them are going to need a lift upgrade, which is $1 million or more, and that's could be a challenge for a lot of these community skiers that are basically breaking even, if they're lucky, year in and year out. The other thing is access to capital. A community ski area can't pick up a phone and call a glass building in New York City and say, wire $1 million in my account and float us. So the access to capital is a big piece of it. And then rising expenses. We see electricity and other insurance and other expenses that are rising. So we know that these smaller ski areas have a lot of challenges ahead of them. So the goal of tonight's symposium is to talk about challenges and opportunities in which to help these smaller ski areas stay vibrant and a part of the community. So to begin with, we are going to have Mr. Jon Reveal provide his keynote speech to us. And about Mr. Reveal, he has been in the ski industry for over 40 years. He worked at major resorts such as Aspen Skiing Company, the Yellowstone Club, Angel Fire, and now, I don't know, can I call it the golden years? Yeah, in the twilight of his career, he's come full circle, and he's now the general manager of a small non-profit-owned ski area called Sleeping Giant, not too far from here, outside of Cody in Wyoming. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Jon Reveal to deliver the keynote.
Thank you, and welcome everyone. I would like to go back just a little bit on myself so that you get a little bit of an idea of what I have been doing over my entire ski career. It's always nice to see the younger people that are here, and I realize that there is a future for not only me, but for the next generation of area managers and people like that that are in this particular business. I would just like to ask a question, see a show of hands. Anybody here that was born before 1947? That's the year I started skiing, so I've been at it for, God only knows, what is that, 71 years or 70 or something like that anyway, years that I've been skiing. And I started at a small ski resort in the state of California called Dodge Ridge. And one of the earliest memories that I have of that little teeny ski area was that I would sit on my mother's lap as she was selling tickets, and I can remember quarters going out the little window in front of me as the people would buy their ticket. And the interesting thing about that is that in about 1948, 1949, my mother said that the ski industry was going into the tank because the people just weren't being honest anymore. When you went to our little ski area, which is actually before Dodge Ridge, which is a little road tail down the hill, if my mother said you'd paid, you'd paid. And no one ever questioned that. And then all of a sudden people started questioning it so that they had to actually hand out little theater tickets to people. And lo and behold, they had to start stapling it onto people's pants because they kept trading the ticket back and forth between one person and another, and not everybody was paying. And that's when my mom said, this is it. That's, you know, you finally got cheaters in the ski industry. This is going to hell in a handbasket. So that's sort of my first memory of it. I could then run forward about 50 years and wind up at the Aspen Skiing Company when we had a whole group of people from a university in the state of Texas show up. And one of our ticket checkers noticed that there was a whole series of tickets, 6-day passes at the Aspen Skiing Company, which were in those days a couple $100. But the ticket number one was always up high on their throat, and number two, it all had the same number. And we found out that one of their students had actually made all of our lift tickets. He got one of them and then reproduced them in their lab at the university, and had almost 150 people on our mountain with false 6-day tickets. So I guess what I'm saying is that what goes around is always coming around. And so I'd like to go back to Dodge Ridge for just a second, where I grew up. And I want to focus on consolidation. And of course, right now, with the Aspen Skiing Company coming out with $1.5 billion to purchase a whole series of ski resorts, it is not very much different than what has happened an awful long time ago. When I think back in my past, Dodge Ridge opened in 1950. Before that happened in 47, 48, and 49, when I first started skiing, there was a rope tow in Pinecrest, there was a rope tow in Strawberry, there was a rope tow in Cold Springs, and there was a series of rope tows at Lombard. And if you know California, that's sort of in the middle of the state, just outside of San Francisco. Dodge Ridge is actually the closest ski resort to San Francisco these days. And when Dodge Ridge opened, all of those failed. Every one of them closed down. And we're starting to see the similar sort of thing now, is that when these big companies come in with millions and millions of dollars, I think back to the time when, here once again at the Aspen Skiing Company, when the Crown family, which owned it, got a paycheck or a check one day because they own General Dynamics, which makes the F-16. They wanted to take on some debt, so they took on $1 billion in debt. And so one day they got a check, they were 25%, so they got a check for $250 million. And we got a nice little email saying, if you've got anything you want to buy, just let us know, because we happen to have a lot of cash and we have to get it invested. So, and these are people that invested in things like FedEx and started it with $150 million and walked out with several $1 billion just a short time later. This sort of money is absolutely impossible to think about for where I am today, where we do 7,000 skiers a year is all. I think of my largest day at the Aspen Skiing Company, we did 31,300 in one day on the 26th of December in 1998. It's a long ways from something like Aspen to a place like Sleeping Giant in the state of Wyoming. But I can tell you absolutely it is a hell of a lot more fun to run Sleeping Giant than it ever was to run the Aspen Skiing Company. Just simply because now I know almost everybody. And there, you don't know 31,300 people. You don't know who they are. You have absolutely no idea. So there's a cachet about a small ski area that has to be a part of that ski area. And if it's not, then I believe that we will lose that part that makes you so special. In the next couple of days, you are going to be at a ski resort up, or a ski area up in Beartooth, which was started a long time ago by the Stieglers when they were first running their camps up there for summertime ski racing camps. And it's still up and it's still going, and it has a cachet about it. But if you go back to some of the old guys, like that old guy sitting right there that I came in with, who skied there 30 or 40 years ago, and he came in and there was 2 cars in the parking lot, and he now goes up there and there's 60. You know, it's that sort of a change that we see in the ski industry. But the cachet is still there, and that's what we're looking for at all the places. When I go back and look at my career, whether, you know, it was living and being in Dodge Ridge, and then a few years later going over to Bear Valley and working there for a while, and then finally a friend of mine told me, he said, if you really want to be in the ski business, you better get to Colorado, because that's where everything is going to happen in the next little bit. And he happened to phone up the president of Keystone and said, you have to hire this guy, because he's a good guy. And so I finally got into Colorado, and it was quite a difference. I can remember just about 2 months after I got to Keystone, we were getting ready to do snowmaking, an expansion on snowmaking in 1976 at Keystone. And I'm somewhat of a financial guy, and I talked to the president after I looked at the snowmaking, and I said, you know, I'm sorry, but you set aside $1 million for snowmaking, and I've run all the numbers, and it's going to be about $1,375,000. Now I'm the new guy in town, and I've got to go and see the president. And he says, oh, don't worry, just go see Kurt, the CFO, and tell him what you need. So I walk over 2 offices and knock on the door and go in and see Kurt, and he's behind his desk, and it's huge, and I'm scared to death. And I go through my whole thing that we need $1,375,000. And he puts down the Wall Street Journal, and he goes, how much is that? So you need another $375,000. He reaches into a lower drawer, pulls out a 13-column spreadsheet, takes his eraser, does this, $1,375,000? Okay, thank you. Only about a month or so beforehand, we had a snowmobile at Bear Valley blow up, the engine blown up. And I went in to see the general manager and said, we need a new snowmobile. He yells across the hallway to his wife, who's the accountant, and says, Bonnie, can we get a new snowmobile? Coming back across the hallway goes, how much? He looks at me, I say, $1,200. He says, $1,200. He says, yeah, we can do that. So there's a difference there. All of a sudden, I'd gone from a mom and pop ski area to Keystone, that was owned by Ralston Purina in those days. And to get $1,200 was about the same as getting $375,000 in the next little step. And all of a sudden I realized that I had walked out of Mon Pa ski area from Dodge Ridge, Bear Valley. I was now in the corporate world. I remember taking one of the regional, they had 16 vice presidents or 16 presidents in Ralston Purina. I happened to be taking one of the guys back to Denver to get on the jet, and I just had to ask him, I said, how many employees do you have? He said, I'm not really too sure, but I think it's around 60,000. Oh, holy crap! What sort of a company is running Keystone Resort? But we were very successful. It was a perfect time for me to go from a Mon Pa ski area to the corporate world, because we took Keystone from 265,000 skiers when I was there in 1976 to when I left in 1984 to 1,065,000. And all of a sudden, the amount of money flowing into these particular organizations was huge. From there, with a short hiatus over to Mount Everest, I wound up with the Aspen Skiing Company in 1984, and we were thinking about really redoing the Aspen Skiing Company. And I was charged with going around and getting rid of everything that was not centered around Aspen. So, off to Spain, sell Baccarat Ritz. Off to Canada, sell Whistler. Over to state of Washington, get rid of Burley Winters. And finally, it turned into Breckenridge. We needed to sell Breckenridge, which was not right in the Aspen area. And that's when I really realized that even though I think I'm really smart at what I do, I was probably the dumbest guy in the room. Because we sat in the room and I did my presentation to the board of directors and told them that if we could find someone that was really into skiing, we could probably get $16, $17 million for Breckenridge. And if we got somebody that was more into, taking a risk, maybe $23 million. And if someone were to really take a look at what we had and look at the private land and realize there's some potential there, I thought we could get to $34 million. So that's quite a change, but still, there, as P.T. Barnum said, there's a fool born every day, And so I said, I think our top end is going to be $34 million. And one of the members of the board of directors stood up and said, okay, we'll put it on the market for $68 million, see what happens. About 4 months later, we received $68,200,000 from a Japanese firm, because they did not want us to think that they couldn't afford $68 million. So they threw in another $200,000 just to make sure that we knew that they could do it. And that's when I realized that I was just out of it. I was a bloody ski bum. And that's all I'd ever done. And all of a sudden there's financial people here and there in the ski industry that are really looking at the value of some of these properties. And into this mix comes a fellow by the name of Les Otten, who went around and started buying up ski areas around the United States. And here is a guy that really looked at, how would you say it, it's sort of the idea is bigger than the reality, but sort of smoke and mirrors allowed him to create value in things that really didn't exist and may never exist. And with that, the American Ski Company, which was also very much like the company I was working for, ASC, which is Aspen Skiing Company. He was of American Ski Corporation. And they owned things like Steamboat Springs and things like that, and big resorts back in the East, mostly in the East Coast. And his idea was to put every rental shop together and go to Rosignol and buy all their equipment for the whole year, and go to Solomon and buy all of their stuff. And he put out an IPO and it started selling at 16, and just a few years later, it was finally taken off the stock market because it had gone under 25 cents. And he took a whole group of people down with him. And at that time, you start to see the movement in the ski resort and the ski industry. Because all of a sudden, you had people going, what's the real value of this? And where are we going as an industry? And lo and behold, what happens to the ski industry? But snowboards start coming in. And all of a sudden it starts going the other way. And instead of having a declining population, we start to see an increase in population. And with that, I go back to my Aspen Ski Company days and realize that when I was there, the man that hired me, after we put the gondola in on Aspen Mountain, he took the lift ticket price from $29 to $35. And when asked, he made a big mistake. He said, when you go and buy a Mercedes, you're going to pay more than if you buy a Chevrolet. And we are the Mercedes of the ski industry. Within about a month, he was gone because of those comments. When you think back now, when you now plunk down 109, or like in Aspen, $155 a day. Could you imagine going up to the ticket window now with my dear mom, sliding quarters underneath the little window that's cut out at the bottom, and you put down a $500 bill for your family of 4? Guy goes, come on. If you want 4 tickets, you got to have a little bit more money than that $500 bill if you're going to be skiing, all of you here at Aspen. So all of a sudden, there's a tremendous interest in the larger ski areas. And I remember the old book Peyton Place, where it says, the rich get richer and the poor get babies. And that's basically what was happening to the ski industry, is that the big guys were getting bigger, and the little guys are starting to get smaller. And all of a sudden, their access, as Jamie said, to capital dries up. Their ability to attract really good people is also disappearing. And you've got to redefine some of the ski areas and what they are doing. If we go back and look at things historically, we realize that ski areas, just like the little ones at Longbarn and Strawberry and Pinecrest and Longbarn, where I grew up, they're still out there. And they are just sort of making it because they are very close to a population center. If you think about the first resort that was actually created in 1936, which is Sun Valley, or true resort, and I want to identify the difference between a resort and a ski area. A ski area, as far as I can tell, is basically just a series of lifts, and there's nothing at the bottom. And all of a sudden you have a resort where they made a conscious effort. If you even read in what Gottschalk wrote, he said it is best to stay away from major population centers because you will overcrowd the ski resort on the weekend. And in those days, in the 30s, just right before World War II, there was really this thing of talking about ski weeks. And people would go, especially in Europe, they would go out to the mountains and spend an entire week learning how to ski or being a skier. And Sun Valley learned something very quickly, and that is celebrity sells. If you go back and take a look at the film, Sun Valley Serenade, what are they talking about? They're talking about how wonderful it is to be in the mountains, how wonderful it is to be where the pristine snow is, and everybody is, there's no hazard, there's no problem. Everybody is better looking than what they are when they're in ski clothes. Thank God, you know, Mrs. Boker came along and helped all of us. And we had a real celebrity group start to build up about skiing. And all of a sudden skiing became a rich guy's sport. So in 1936, you start to see this group that's coming out of Chicago. What are they doing? They're riding the ski train out to Sun Valley to go skiing. The major party, as I understand it, I'm not that old, when the ski train would come out of Los Angeles, it was basically a party all the way to Sun Valley because the train ran all the way to Haley. And then you get on a bus and go up to Sun Valley, and everyone stayed in the Sun Valley Lodge. And everybody took lessons. Come on in, don't worry about it, just walk in. And everybody was there for a week. So you got to know absolutely everybody in your class, and you knew the ski instructor, and everybody knew everybody else was there. And it was something that you did for a week long. Every winter you would go back, and it's very much, I think, like what we have up in CMH in Canada, where the same group of guys and girls will all get together and go helicopter skiing for a week up in Canada. It's very much like what was happening back in the late 30s. Of course, World War II sort of gets in the way, and out of that comes the 10th Mountain Division. Come on in, don't worry. Come on, get in here. I'm not going to talk down the hallway. Come on. So we do have this idea of a ski train, and the idea that resorts are way out at the end of the railroad tracks. And of course, Sun Valley was made so that they could put people on trains from Chicago and LA and take them to Sun Valley, and then have them as a captive market for basically a week out there. Then if you go forward just 4 years and you go to 1940 and you see Winter Park start. And what is Winter Park? Winter Park is a park for the city of Denver. And where was it? Right on the other side of Berthoud Pass. If anybody starts thinking about driving Berthoud Pass now, it's a formidable drive right now. In 1940, with a 1940 brand new car, getting to Winter Park was no easy task. But how did most people get there? On the ski train. So they would actually get onto the ski train in Denver, come basically underneath the Rockies, and wind up at Winter Park. And there's the train sitting there, and there's the ski area sitting there. Works just perfectly. And so you have a template now for many cities around the United States that can create parks where there would be skiing, or there would be a mom and pop that would have a little hill somewhere, and they would be putting up a little roto, and everything was sort of taken care of by the family, and you had mom as the ticket checker, and dad was the lift mechanic, and the son was the lift operator, and the daughter was teaching skiing. It was a family type of an operation in those days. And here we have little parks starting to build up around the United States. And if you go into southern Canada, you find clubs starting to put up ski racing hills in and around the cities of Canada. And in many places in Canada, they still have private ski hills. When I went to Quebec in Canada, and I ran a ski area there called Mont-Saint-Anne, it was a government business. And they had put in almost $150 million into this resort. And they had put underground parking, they had built 2 golf courses, they put in a huge ski area, ski off the front, ski off the back, full automatic snowmaking system, detachable chairlifts, everything was there, $150 million. The company I went to work for bought it for $6 million. So they could tell very quickly there wasn't a real business model that was done before the Canadian Quebec government got into the ski industry. And they sold it and got out and gave it to someone else. And then finally, I was the one that sold it. One of those skills that I have. We sold it for $16 million. And I realized, once again, I'd returned to the corporate world when we went to Pinehurst and signed all the documents. And I walked out, and I'd actually told the guy I was working for, who was the chief financial officer, that it would be nice if I could stay maybe with their company. And he said, well, that's really not going to happen, but thank you very much, and shook my hand and said, this year, 2 weeks' notice. And that was the end of my trip into Canada, because I was let go with the 2 weeks' notice after making them $10 million. And I know one of the great things that happened to me in, what year was it, about 1968. I was chosen for the top 10 ski instructors in the United States, and that was the same year Jean-Claude Keely won the 3 gold medals in Grenoble. And the French government realized that they actually had the ability to bring people into France if their ski instructor taught the French ski technique in America or whatever country it was. So consequently, they brought 129 of us together and would teach us, and the idea of going back out and proselytizing to the rest of the world. And it worked. You take a look at some place where I was, which was Courchevel, the Three Valleys. They now do more skiers in those 5 areas than they do in the state of Colorado, in just one major ski resort in France. And it works. And those things were all done by Emile Lelay, who started the French National School right at the end of World War II. And those people that are traveling and going around from area to area, they are starting to realize that there is a requirement to stay in the upper end of your stratus. And what does that mean? That means fast lifts, that means gondolas, and that means a whole base area. You go to Aspen. What's right across the street from Aspen? Prada. Or my old office. Right across the street from my old office in Aspen is the Prada store. Next, just around the corner is the Louis Vuitton store. That is what people expect in the major ski resorts today. And we have people that, I think one of the best examples is that during the Gulf War, we noticed at Buttermilk that we had a real reduction in the amount of revenue that was coming in the ski school. And then we realized that the Prince Bandar, since there was a war, and he was actually from Saudi Arabia, but he didn't want to come skiing. Our Christmas time revenue with just the ski school at Buttermilk alone dropped over $100,000 because he did not come. All of a sudden, you've got 1 or 2 people that can make or break a major ski resort. And when that happens, then you've got more people pulling at these particular types of people to come into their resort. Aspen has a airport basically right in town. If you miss the runway in Aspen, you're going to wind up in the rental shop at Buttermilk. That's how close it is, because there's only a small roadway between the two. And you've got now these huge corporations coming in and starting to take over, where I had taken the Aspen Skiing Company down to just 3 little pretty major ski areas, Buttermilk, Aspen, and Snowmass. Then we got rid of everything else, and we bought the Highlands, so we had everything right next to us. We could control basically everything. And about 1.5 years later, Apollo came in and took George Gillette out of Vail Associates after he had gone in and, what was that guy's name? Michael Milken. And he had come in and set the price of Vail Associates at, I don't know, $400 or $500 million, and then borrowed money against the $400 or $500 million. Of course, it wasn't worth any of that, so George Gillette lost it. And Apollo, they came in and bought it. And that is the group then that starts a new wave of consolidation. This consolidation, I think, really comes to a head when you start to see something like the Aspen Skiing Company walk up with $1.5 billion to buy ski resorts. All of a sudden, the little ski area like Sleeping Giant doesn't stand a chance. But the only thing that we can do is what we can do that they can't. And I think it's very much like when I went from the Aspen Skiing Company in Mont Saint-Anne over to the Yellowstone Club. And all of a sudden we had to change what we were, at least what I was thinking about, because I had spent 96 through 98 designing the area, and then I got there in 98 and built it, and then ran it from that point on. And I remember the guy that took me there was Warren Miller. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a photographer. And I had known Warren since I was 13 years old, and he was the one that took me up there the first time. He says, we got to go and talk this guy out of starting this private resort up in Montana. He's going to lose his ass. And so they sent the plane. Warren was living in Vail, and I was in Aspen, so they stopped and picked me up. They're coming out of California, picked me up in Aspen, Florida. Vail picked up Warren. We went up to Bozeman, Montana. we got out, we went skiing, and I was very impressed with the place. And so I'm in my room doing all the financials, and at that time they were going to have like 1,000 members, and I put all the numbers together, and I'm walking down towards Warren's room thinking, you know, this is not a bad deal. It looks like this guy is going to invest about 16 million. He's going to make about 120 million, and that's not a bad deal. And I'm looking at my figures, and I'm walking down towards Warren's room, and I'm going, crap, that's not right. I'm a zero off. He's going to make $1.2 billion. Knocked on Warren's desk, or his door, walked in and said, Warren, you got to get involved in this thing. There's a, excuse the comment, shitbox full of money available for us at this place, and this could be a one-of-a-kind. And as it turned out, it probably will be a one-of-a-kind operation. And all of a sudden, my thinking had to stop from 31,300 people in one day to 2, 4, maybe 10 when we first got going. I remember the patrol one day asked me, they said, would you open this particular run, because it was my favorite run on the mountain. I said, sure, man, that's fine. And I went over there, skied down, called them, yep, it's ready to go, the road's perfect. And at the end of the day, we're still a little short-handed, and they called me up and said, would you go back and do your favorite run again? I go over there, I'm going down, and I thought, what the hell skied here? And I realized it was me that skied there that morning. I put 2 sets of tracks on one run, and I was the only guy that skied it the entire day. But it was completely groomed that night. It was ready to go the next day. And so all of a sudden we find out that at something like the Yellowstone Club can find a niche for people that, here once again, I'll show you how stupid I am, I'm just a ski bum, is that when we did some of our first analysis, I said there's no reason to have a children's center here, because of the fact that, and I'm really a smart guy and I was going to prove it, that these people are going to be around 50, 55. If you've got to have $3 million just to get in the door, that's not going to be a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old. Lo and behold, about the third guy in is a fellow by the name of Troy Downey. He's now running for Senate here in the state of Montana. Troy Downey was about the third or fourth person into Yahoo. And I remember looking at his application and thought, yeah, the guy just put $3 million. Oh shit, 300 million. And Troy's first question, or second question, third question was, where's the children's center? I said, right here, that's where the children's center is going to be. Because I didn't think we were going to need one. All of a sudden I realized that there's 20-year-olds that have hundreds of millions of dollars in their pocket and are willing to spend it and want something specific for their family. And so all of a sudden I had to change my mind from thinking about how am I going to take care of 30,000 people to how am I going to take care of 4. And that is where I come back to a place like Sleeping Giant. Because I made more money in the Aspen Skiing Company in an hour and a half than we make the entire year when we just had skiing at Sleeping Giant. So if you can find a niche for your resort, then you will make it. But there's no way that a small resort like Sleeping Giant is ever going to be able to make it just in the ski business, because we just can't charge enough money. There's no way that I can charge what Jackson Hole, Wyoming does, $109. Our price is $36 a day for a ticket, and a lot of people still can't afford that. So we have gone to the Episcopal Church in the state of Wyoming, which gives us $50,000 a year to take care of people that cannot afford to go skiing. We've been able to find places where there's money. We have a dinner that produced $83,000 this year that gets us over the hump so that we can get into summer. And one of the great things that President Obama did was change the winter operating plan at ski areas to allow them, even though a lot of the big ones were doing it already, to operate during the summertime. And I can tell you from my experience, it's not going to be everybody's small ski area experience, is that our savior is going to be the summertime. Now, we are very lucky in that we have about 3.5 million people that drive by our front door every year. We are 3.5 miles outside, just to the east, of Yellowstone National Park. And all of those people become a potential customer for us. Last year at this time, I think I had about, in fact, zero money in the bank from pre-sales for the zip line. In January, we started getting calls for reservations on our zip line as late as August. And I'm thinking, who in the hell ever plans that far ahead? I don't even know I'm going to have for breakfast tomorrow morning. And here's somebody that's doing it, 4 or 5 months, 6 months, 7 months out ahead. And right now, we have over $17,000 in the bank just from the pre-sale of zipline tours at Sleeping Giant. And this should be our first year that we will make money since we opened in 2009. And what gets us over that is the fact that, number one, we have a community that is very much in our favor of making sure that we make it. And we are focused in the niche that I have decided to go after is mom and dad. And we even have what we call the grandpa viewing area upstairs, where you have large windows where they can overlook the beginning ski slopes. And that's where grandma and grandpa, they go up there and sit down and they will play cards all day long and watch little Johnny and little Sally out skiing up and down. One of my favorite times at Sleeping Giant was when I looked out and we had 4 3-year-olds skiing on our little carpet totally by themselves. Their parents were absolutely fine with it. And we have one other thing, and that is the fact that we are all facing the lodge. Every run you can basically see on that mountain, you can see from the day lodge. The schools love us. They come up and they know that nobody can go off the backside. The worst thing they can do is possibly fall into the Shoshone River down at the bottom, but it's usually frozen over, so they can't do that even in the wintertime. So we are a very safe area, and that's who we are going after. We are going after anybody in our area. We have arguments all the time about should we be advertising just like they do at Jackson Hole. I say no. We don't worry about Jackson Hole. This is not Aspen. No one's going to come here for a week-long vacation because we're only open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're not going to come here for a week. What else you got to do? There's really, except for the museum and maybe a snowmobile ride into the park, which there's only 6 places or 8 places like that every day that you can go in on our site. It's not like West Yellowstone. There's nothing for us to do there. So we have got to expand into the summer months. And our season, because of the fact that we were in the Yellowstone Grizzly Bear Rehabilitation Area, limits our opening from June 15th to September 15th. So in 92 days last year, we made more money at Sleeping Giant than we did during the wintertime. And the great thing about that is that I don't need to groom the slopes. I don't need to run all the lifts. I don't have to have a ski patrol. I don't have to have snowcats, and I don't have to have, sorry, I know we need snowcats. We don't need to have groomers out there. The grass grows, the bears come in, the bears leave. We have Bob and his 2 buddies, the buffalo, living in our parking lot. We've got a moose and her kid just down the road right now. We have a bear and 2 cubs about 9 miles down the road. It's like a nice little wonderland for us. And I have 14 people that work for me during the summertime. And I make more money top line than I do during the wintertime with 60. And so that is going to be the survival, I believe, of the small community ski area. There is going to be, if we have the ability to grow in the future, some of that is going to have to be with climbing walls and rope courses and mountain biking. Right now, we can't even be on the ground very much because of the grizzly bears. And excuse if you were an environmental person that's off the deep end, but what I call the enviro-Nazis, if that particular group gets into your community and starts to stop everything, then we are going to, inevitably, we are going to be unable to sustain these small ski areas. We have to realize that the National Forest is millions and millions and millions of acres. Sleeping Giant takes up 128 acres. And all we want to do is play in that 128 acres. I don't want the million. The sheep can have the million. The buffalo can have the million acres. They can do everything they want out there. But we have to be able to do more than just skiing and maybe ziplining at our areas. We've got to be able to get into as many businesses as we can, which there is a niche for us to have, whether that is groups coming in or however it's going to be. That's where the future, I think, of the small ski area is going to be. So with that, I will call it quits for the evening, and we will start our panel. Is that correct, Jamie? That's what's up next? Yeah. So how am I doing on time? Are we okay?
We're great.
Okay, we're okay. So I just want to thank you for showing up and listening to an old guy in the ski business talk about how I got here and the actual idea of being able to give back. I think about when I was working at the Yellowstone Club. Right now, I make 1/10 of what I made at the Yellowstone Club, but it's worth every day of it. I'm saying that only because Sox is on the board of directors, and I just want to impress him with it. So, but no, realistically, it is worth every day because I can walk down through the town in Cody, and I'll hear, "Mr. John, Mr. John," and there will be some little kid over there that I know from the ski industry or from Sleeping Giant yelling at me, you know, and to go skiing with those kids and to realize that when they get to be my age, it will be 2087. Think of that. 2087. And those little kids, hopefully, will still be skiing at Sleeping Giant. Thank you.
So we're going to bring out our other panelists, Carl and Matt. Join us. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a little panel discussion, and I'll introduce these fellows in a moment. And then afterwards, we'll be taking questions or other topics that we want to talk about. And also those of you viewing online, you can type in the comments, and we have somebody monitoring it, and we'll address a few cyber questions.
Okay, let's meet our panelists. Panelist number one.
Mr. Hansen, Matt Hansen, is the editor-at-large from Powder Magazine and has written some amazing stories over the years and some very touching, compelling stories, and covers a wide range of things, but talks a lot about the soul of the sport. And, we thought he would be a great addition to the panel. He's also one of the few guys in the ski industry that can get away with a mustache. So join me in welcoming Mr. Hansen to the table. All right, next up is Carl Kish, and Carl is the managing director and co-founder of Stoke Certified. Stoke is the acronym for Sustainable Tourism Operators Kit for Evaluation. That's a mouthful. And essentially, they are the world's only snow certification program for ski areas. And Carl and I worked together on several projects. Carl also represents the ever-elusive millennial generation. So thank you, Carl, for joining us. And then, of course, Mr. Reveal. So we have really three generations of folks here to kind of talk about these different discussions. So Mr. Reveal we heard from and now we know about, so I don't have to reintroduce him. Okay, so we're going to start off just sort of a round table. The first one we're going to talk about is ski area consolidation. So the idea is I'll give a little spiel, a little intro, and then turn it over to our panelists for their intro. So in April, we heard that Aspen Skiing Company and KSL Capital Partners together combined a new entity, and they went out and they purchased 6 Intra-West ski resorts. Then 2 days later, they announced the Mammoth ski resorts were going to be, and that's another 4. So now this entity is going to own 16 ski resorts, and then the other behemoth is Vail Resorts. And Vail Resorts owns about 14 or 15 ski resorts. And just to put it in perspective, these two conglomerates now will control roughly 35% of the whole skier market in less than 30 ski resorts out of a total of 470. So, John, let's start with you. What do you see consolidation, and how do you see that affecting our smaller community skiers?
Well, you know, I will have to say that I am not exactly for a lot of consolidation, because I think it takes out a lot of the sort of one-upsmanship that we always like to have in the ski industry. I'm always worried when you get big corporate guys that are worried just about the next quarter and what that's going to mean to whether or not they're going to still be in the business. I think when we have a short-term look at something, I don't think that in a mature industry is going to be very hopeful for the industry. I can see that there will be some upside to it. In other words, you will buy one ticket and have 16 resorts to go to, or you'll have 14 resorts to go to. But at the same time, I think whenever you start to take away competition, then you start to gravitate towards higher and higher prices and a reduction in the number of people that can afford. Now, when I started this industry, it was a rich man's sport. There was no doubt about it. And one of the great things about it is that it stayed relatively affordable for a very long time. But as I said, when you go to a ski resort and you plunk down a $500 bill for your family of 4, and you still don't have enough money on the table yet to get 4 lift tickets, I think there's a problem.
Well, regarding consolidation, I guess, you know, from my perspective, I guess just to echo what John was saying on some of the positive side is that looking at it objectively, if you're a skier at Stowe, Vermont, which was just bought out, and the season pass there was one of the most expensive in the country at over $2,000, and they just announced a couple weeks ago that the season pass will now be the lead on the Epic Pass, which would be like $800, $900, which as a local skier, that's really hard to argue with, right? Yeah. It saves you a lot of money. I think on the downside, though, I think we are at risk of losing some of our culture when everything is run the same way. And I remember when I moved out to California, going skiing at Mammoth, which had an Intra-West Village, and then driving up to Squaw Valley, which also had an Intra-West Village. And I realized that if I had kind of gone from one place to the other in a tunnel, that when I came out, I wouldn't even recognize that it was a different place. And I think that I don't know, you can go skiing and have fun, but I think that the experience is diminished, you know, in my opinion. And I think that skiing, what is so cool about skiing is it has such a rich, unique culture that really is in no other sport. And, you know, to lose that, I think, is a shame. And I think that when you consolidate all these things and run them the same, it's almost like going to a chain. It's like going to a Sizzler or an Applebee's. And it's not nearly as nice as when you go to the diner down the street that's run by a couple.
And just to briefly add to that, definitely the culture piece, when you lose that, you know, the ski industry is struggling to get new generations up to the mountain and keep them up there. And so having a unique experience is definitely part of it. The affordability is another part. I learned how to ride at a really small, affordable ski area. And if it wasn't for that place, I never would have started, because lift tickets in Tahoe were already starting to get too expensive by the time I started in high school. But from a sustainability standpoint, you know, when there's less competition, there's a number of reasons why that's an issue, but in terms of sustainability, what we're trying to push is that if ski resorts are competing on a sustainability level in terms of renewable energy, community development, cultural heritage integration, then they're going to keep trying to better themselves through that, you know, lens of sustainability. But if they keep buying up all each other and they have these same experiences, and they're like, well, we own these 30 other ski resorts, and we have one that's doing some sustainability stuff, so we'll just push that really hard. There's less of an initiative or reason or incentive to do that.
So essentially, the consolidation is sometimes buying the competition so they don't have to compete with one another. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's move on to how can small ski areas compete? We talked about authenticity and we talked about summer operations. Two ways that these smaller ski areas can compete against the big conglomerates and of course the lower price point. Is there anything else the panel would like to add, starting with Matt on smaller ski areas and their ability to compete in the big world?
I think that I've written about this in the past, and I think that one of the things that truly sets small ski areas apart is just their uniqueness, and that every place is different. You also have, it's multi-generational. You have, it's very welcoming, not just to the local shredder who's, a ski bum and he's spends every waking hour just thinking about snow and skiing, but it also has children and mom and dad, the grandparents, and then that is sustained over the course of their lives. Like you can go back and you can ski at a place, and then 20 years later you can come back and it's the same, and the same kind of people are still there. So I think that just having that uniqueness is really important.
I think that one of the things that I saw as I was going through the ski industry is what I call the importation of a lifestyle. And I think this happened at some of the large ski areas, and I go back to Aspen and to Sun Valley, where the people that came there, even though they had a lot of money, they integrated very well with the locals. And they had a small place. They lived and they skied with the locals. They became a part of it. I think the last guy that I knew that was fairly well to do was Hall and Oates. Which one was it? It was Hall. So, no, it was Oates. John Oates, who skied in Aspen a lot. I skied with him quite a bit. And he was really a member of the community. And then we had the guy who I can't remember his name, but he was married for a while to Barbara Streisand. He came in there and he imported his lifestyle. And when he came, he would bring his own chef. Inside of his 35,000 plus home, he had a movie theater. And so he brought in all the movies. And this importation of a lifestyle all of a sudden created a vision between the true ski bum, which I was, and still am, and the people that were moving into those communities, and they imported their lifestyle, and it changed the entire feel of that particular a place that used to be a ski area and is now a showboat for people of wealth. The reason that there's a Prada store in Aspen is so that chairman of the board of Prada can go and ski in Aspen and ride off the trip. Maybe that's not true, but that's certainly my opinion.
I'll add some more local topics.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't want to repeat myself too much.
All right, so we're going to move on to sustainability initiatives and some examples. And, climate change is real. Anyone that is visiting a ski area over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years has seen the effects of climate change. And ironically, or surprisingly rather, I think the ski industry as a whole has really taken a laissez-faire approach to climate change. There has been some adaptation, such as focusing on summer operations and snowmaking efficiencies. But as a whole, I think, and a lot of people will agree, that the ski industry really has not been at the forefront yet of sustainability initiatives. In fact, out of the 479 operating ski areas this year, less than 10 have on-site renewable energy. My gas station where I live has solar panels on the roof. So, the ski industry has arguably the most to lose out of any industry from climate change. So I want to talk a little bit about sustainability initiatives and some examples of ski areas that are doing that sort of thing and leading by example. And by the way, typically there's between 53 to 60 million skier visits a year in the United States. So there's a huge megaphone for these ski areas and ski resorts to shout into. So Carl, this is sort of your space, so why don't we start with you?
Yeah, so to stick to community ski areas and how generally people think of sustainability as this really expensive thing that only the rich ski resorts can do, I'll stick to two pretty good examples, which one of them is Mount Abram in Maine. That's an MRA member. Jamie, you helped them get that REAP grant, right, for 803 panel solar array as a ground mount. And that provides nearly 70% of their annual energy demand. They also use that grant to do high efficiency snowmaking guns and a biomass pellet burner for heating. And all these initiatives combined produce 765,000 pounds of CO2 each year. And they're looking to build upon that. And since they started doing this in 2011, their skier visits have increased 35% each year. Now, it's not totally attributed to the sustainability side. They also got some new killer management in there, but it's definitely part of it because people respond to that. If the local community sees that your ski area cares about their future and getting their grandkids up at the mountain, then they're gonna support that. Another example is Mount Ashland in Ashland, Oregon, which we just certified as our first sustainable ski area. We helped them get nearly $100,000 in grant and other federal and state incentives towards an 85 panel array on their roof, and they had to raise $25,000 additional dollars to pay for the project. Now they're a nonprofit community ski area, and so because they do so many wonderful things for the community with canned food drives and getting underprivileged youth up to the mountain, and after-school youth programs, and soil and watershed conservation projects up on the hill because they're at the top of the city of Ashland's watershed, the community responded to that and said, yeah, of course we'll donate to that, and their lodge renovation. So it's just, those are two really good examples of a lot of different sustainability initiatives that come together to help the bottom line, but also support the community and the culture that's there.
What do you got to do now?
I guess just on climate change in general, is just, I think it's about time that the ski industry really starts to figure out how to be at the front of it. And we have some groups doing some great things like Protect Our Winters, but the industry itself needs to come together to try to create change. Otherwise, it's happening. You know, I mean, you go to whatever region you want in the wintertime, it's happening. This year it was the Midwest and the Southeast. A few years ago it was California, the entire West Coast. Who knows? It might be Montana next year. Maybe it's Jackson Hole next year. Who knows? Every time it snows, I'm always kind of wondering, is this the last time it's ever going to snow? And that's a really pessimistic way to look at the future, but like, it's real. It can happen. And I think that the ski industry needs to come together to really create change. And that is the resorts, ski companies, magazines, everybody. We just need to figure out how we can flex our muscle, because we have a lot of muscle. Like you said, there's 53 million people who ski every year, and I don't know, we have to do something, or else within 100 years, there may not be skiing in the United States, other than on Beartooth Mountains. There's a snow there today.
You know, I will add, you know, from the operator's point of view, it's almost sad what we as an industry have done, other than just recognize the fact that it's happening. If I go back and where they have very good records in Courchevel in France, they now realize that 1 meter a year is where the snow line is moving up the mountain. And Courchevel, I don't know if you know, but it starts at 1,300. That's the number of meters in elevation. And so 13, 15, 50, 16, 50, and 1850, where I was at the top, the snow is slowly moving up the mountain, so that they have actually had to put in snowmaking at 1,300, at 1550, 1650, and now at the bottom of 1850. If they didn't have snowmaking, they could not get back to the base area anymore, unless it's an extraordinary year. But average year, they are not going to be able to ski from the top of the Sauvier all the way to the village, because there would be no snow in almost the last 3/4 of a mile now into town. There would be no snow to ski upon. and they'd just be skiing on the upper part of the mountain. So I think we recognize it, but just as you're saying that, it's something that we as an industry have got to start to realize. The other good part of the fact that, this is what Sox and I were talking about on the way over, is that if Colorado moves to Wyoming, we're still doing okay. And Montana's got a long time before they're going to run out of snow. So, but I would hate to be in New Mexico and in Arizona, Arizona Snow Bowl, and in the southern part of Colorado.
I'll just kind of add to that, and I think, you know, as this pertains to small ski areas and what Carl's talking about, where you have really good examples of some skiers that are doing very, very cool things to do their part. And I think that as a skier, that to me makes me want to go and support those places and you know, give them my money and buy the tickets and buy a hamburger at the Day Lodge. And it's kind of, I think it's a little distasteful that our bigger resorts aren't doing more to help other than kind of the standard greenwashing that we see all over the place.
And I'd like to give credit to Powder Magazine, because you guys have been really covering this in the last few years, and you know, maybe some of the people that you're covering aren't excited about it, but you guys are the skiers' Bible, and so I think it's really admirable that you guys are taking just sort of a generic approach, but calling out, as you have tonight, and saying, hey, mega resorts, you guys need to be focusing and being leaders on this. Carl, you have something else to add?
Well, just to kind of address what you're talking about, where we have a big voice as a skiing community, and our vision for Stoke was that if we can leverage everyone's stoked for the mountains and getting up there and wanting to support those places that are doing the right thing with lift ticket dollars and burgers at the Day Lodge, that has a big impact. And we've seen it across other industries where when people vote with their dollars, the industry changes. So if we can be that transparent, easy choice to say like, okay, it's a Stoke certified ski area, we know that our dollars are going to support the local community and the environment, and we're going to have a great time up on the hill too, then why not? So that's what we want to try and leverage, is that kind of financial change, because if the ski resort industry themselves are not going to get together, it's going to take the people to demand it for that to change. So.
And I'll throw out a sneak preview, but we've recruited a group of industry movers and shakers and are in the process of forming a new nonprofit entity that's going to essentially be snow sports community driven to basically demand that their ski resorts and ski areas reduce their carbon footprint. This is really a huge issue, and it's time. We've been on the sidelines and watched. Not much go on. You know, if you think about the programs, they're all pretty much voluntary. So in the months and years to come, especially with pulling out of the Paris Agreement and all these other things, there is going to be a much bigger focus. So stay tuned for that coming this fall.
I think there's one other thing, and that is the fact that all of a sudden, instead of a ski area having local mom and pop organizations that buys their food at the local markets and uses the local purveyor for his vegetables or whatever, it's all working together. And if you have a corporation that all of a sudden owns your local ski area, and those people are reporting on a quarterly basis back to New York City or LA or wherever the CEO of the conglomerate is located, they aren't interested in the local. If there's not an ROI on doing something at your resort, then stop doing it. I think that's the message that's given. And I think that is a very, very wrong and very short-term idea of a CEO who's responsible to his board of directors or his stockholders for doing something. I think of Dave McCoy in the long time ago when he used to take care of all the school kids. You know, if Dave McCoy were living in LA, he'd care less about the kids that are local. He wants his money. He wants to go jump on his boat and go out to Catalina or something. You know, that's probably an exaggeration. Obviously, it's an exaggeration, but it's how a lot of those people that are pure corporate folks, that's how they think.
One other thing with the Mount Abram project, we decided to install the 803 solar panels across the street from the main lodge so that every single person could drive in the harsh New England winter and say, wow, they're making energy there in the winter months. So again, a lot of it's educational, and it's a huge microphone that I think the ski industry is missing. And I think in the years, months and years to come, we're going to push that. And years from now, we'll be proud. At least we can tell our kids, hey, we did something about it. So I want to kind of build on the climate change and how it's affecting operations. You know, here in Montana, this was a good year. I'm listening to Beartooth Basin, our host venue for the events this weekend. It was a good year. In fact, there's a lot of snow up there. It's sort of snowing today, huge cornices. But the previous 2 years, they were unable to open for the first time in the history of their operation. In California, which is my home base, we had 4 years in a row of drought. The fourth of them was the worst winter ever recorded. Then we had about an average year, and then this year was a biblical year. There was over 600 inches of snow at the main lodge at Mammoth. We had the highest wind gust ever recorded, 199 miles an hour on top of Alpine Meadows. We had the coldest temperature ever at Crowley Lake, which is minus 29 degrees. So climate change isn't only it doesn't snow, it's just global weirdness. You know, I hate to use the cliche extremes, but the weather is certainly more volatile, and it peaks and it spikes and it goes up and it goes down. So, John, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the zipline project at Sleeping Giant, and that really positioned you as a four-season, and like you mentioned, you made more in 90 days than you did the rest of the years.
Yeah,
how did that go about?
I always think of us as a two-season. You know, if you remember James Missioner when he talked about Centennial, in the state of Colorado, there's 2 seasons, winter and 4th of July. We're sort of in the same boat at Sleeping Giant. We have a fairly short season in the summertime. It was raining on Monday, and we opened the zip line on Thursday, and so the winter just stopped in time for us to get the zip line going. And I would have to guess that before we get out on September 15th, it will snow again up there. So we have a fairly short window to work on. But it did take us, Stocks helped me on this, 5 years, right, to get the zip, how many? 6 years to get the zip line approved. And we went up against the Yellowstone Coalition. We got all the way through, almost ready to start building, and Game and Fish came in and changed everything that they had said over the previous couple of years. When the head of the Game and Fish in that area of Wyoming got a phone call from her major professor in college and said, you've got to stop this project. It's going to affect the grizzly bears in an irreparable fashion, and they're going to disappear off the face of the earth if the zip line goes in at Sleeping Giant. And so instead of having a clear path to success, we had 1 year where when it was finally all brought down, they had to remove, the Forest Service had to remove 1/4 of a mile of road down from us about 7 or 8 miles. 1/4 of a mile. And they also had to remove 3 camping spots from one of the campgrounds in the North Fork area. That was the value placed on the zip line impact. 1/4 mile road and 3 camping sites. And we lost a full year of operation because of it. It's those sorts of things that you have to have, in another way, sustainability for a small ski area. Fortunately, we have a family that has been able to help us through that period of time when we were losing a couple $100,000 every year, and they just kept putting in the money and putting in the money and putting in the money. Without them, I don't think we would have made it. I think the town probably would have said, enough is enough. You guys are just losing it, and we're never going to be able to get the zip line. But we did. It took perseverance, and it also took flexibility. We moved it from one side of the mountain to the other. We no longer had a walking path from one to another. We actually shortened the distance between the unload on one zip and the load of the next zip down to about 60 feet. In one of our zip lines, 4 on the 5, we have 5 zip lines. So on 4 on the 5, you don't even touch the ground. You just walk down a flight of stairs from one level to another in order to take care of the perceived problems that could be there. And then we got into the stupidity of the whole thing. We are not allowed, our customer, once you walk into our place and you buy a zip line ticket, you are not allowed off of the paths that we have created for the zip line. Now, if you stay overnight across the street at Shoshone Lodge, you can go anywhere you want. You can go out there, any right, left, top, bottom, it doesn't matter. But if you are our guest, you have to stay on the paths. There's some stupid things out there, and that's one of them. And I've never really understood why that is. And to have a government official look you in the eye and going, this is good. You go, what? This is good? When the guys across the street have the ability to walk wherever they want, but I've got to force my customer onto all these little rock paths that we have around the way. There's some really stupid things that are going on, and I think we as people need to get over that and start to realize is that in the Forest Service, at the very beginning of the Forest Service, there was a process that was called multi-use. And what that basically meant was that we as a people are going to use the forests for multiple things. We could go mining, we could go tree cutting, we could go fishing, we could go hunting, we can use it in a multi-use way. The Forest Service went through a period where they called, instead of multi-use, they called it multi-abuse. And so they were trying to stop things from happening on our national forest that they did not like. And that has got to stop. We've got to get back to the place where the people of the United States have the right to use their national forest as they want, within certain boundaries. You go back just to 1988 and realize that 1/3 of the trees in Yellowstone National Park burned down because the forest was not managed the way it should be, where you just all of a sudden had 300-year-old trees and forest burning up. And I remember being around Montana at that time where you could not see basically across the street because of the smoke in the air. We were all smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, whether we knew it or not. And it's those sorts of things that have to stop. Sorry to get on my diatribe there, but that's it.
That's good. Glad we could provide a forum for you to vent a little bit. Either one of you guys want to add to that?
Sure. So skiers definitely have to adapt to the changing climate and do year-round operations, and a couple of our members have been trying to do that, even though they're trying to do the right thing in order to do a lot of right things for the community, have faced some local, very minor but very vocal opposition for things that sometimes seem ridiculous, which is tough. I mean, if you look at the Jumbo Resort development in BC, that was shut down because there's clear scientific data that such a large footprint of a resort development like that would cut off a critical grizzly bear migration route and habitat that's vital to the continuation of that species. Whereas a zip line on an existing footprint of a ski area, that's tough to say that that's equivalent. So that kind of stuff, we need to find a balance there. But anyways, going back to just climate change in ski areas, they need to adapt sustainability practices and be able to operate year-round, because climate change has impacts not just only in our mountain communities, but the world over in a lot of their supply chain. And so even like the big resorts that are importing all these different goods and services, a lot of those come from developing countries where they're going to be severely destabilized by climate change. And so it's just, there's a huge domino effect that I could get into. But anyways, ski resorts have to start focusing on renewable energy, that kind of energy security, supporting local goods and services, and being more mindful of that supply chain. So anyways, without going on too long.
Anything else? All right, so next up, let's talk about soul and authenticity, because this is one place that community ski areas are head and shoulders above. They're the cheers of the ski industry, where everyone knows your name. You spoke about how you have 7,000 skier visits, you know everyone, versus 30,000 in one record day. And a lot of these bigger mega resorts that become homogenized and cookie cutter, they're very ununique. They're very generic. And like you mentioned, if you go to Intra-West Village, they look a lot, oh, this reminds me of Vail, or this reminds me of Whistler. So I think where smaller ski areas really have a distinct advantage is the soul and authenticity. And to Carl's generation, the Millennials, you guys are looking for that. You're looking for genuine experiences. So maybe we could talk a little bit, start with you, Carl, about the soul and authenticity of these smaller ski areas and how to preserve and highlight them.
Yeah, I mean, among my peers and then the research that you look at in other products and industries, Millennials, which we don't like to call ourselves that, but we do crave kind of brands and companies that are providing authentic experiences and authentic products. So with ski areas, I can tell you for sure that a lot of my friends, the places that we used to grow up riding that have changed, maybe they begrudgingly still go there now when there's good snow there, but they all complain about how it's been this cookie cutter experience now. And the way it used to feel 5 years ago is not there. And plus they're shelling out, $100+ per lift ticket. And when we do go, or I take them to these community skiers that maybe they didn't know about or didn't think it would be as fun, they're blown away by just the vibe and how cool it feels again to be at a mom and pop ski area where everyone's really friendly and you can talk to anyone and the lift tickets are affordable. And I don't know, there's something unique to it that our generation is definitely craving. So, are we talking about Millennials again later?
No, we'll get to Millennials a little bit later, but Mr. Hansen's soul, authenticity, you write a lot about that in your proud articles that you've been around the planet searching for it. So how does that resonate with you, and what can smaller ski areas do to really highlight and showcase that?
Well, I guess I'll just start by saying I don't think anyone should ever discount the experience that any skier has at any ski area, whether that's a huge, giant conglomerate or your little ski area conglomerate, because it's all this beautiful thing that we love to do. However, I think that Carl just hit it right on the head. I think that soul, as we know it, is just doing what you love, right? Kind of no matter what. And you're not doing it for attention, you're not doing it for money, you're just doing it because you love it. And that's whether you're a surfer, you're a skier, or you're a ski resort owner. Yes, skiers, they need to make money. They have to be able to survive. They need to bring in revenue. Jon is the guy to talk to about that, but I think that for the feel of skiing, soul is something that you can find pockets of soul in skiers that maybe have grown out of what they used to have. One of the things that really bothers me, and not to get super negative, but the thing that really irks me and that makes me probably more jaded than anything is when a ski resort sort of takes advantage of and exploits this soulful community that they've had, but yet at the same time makes it harder for that community to continue to live and thrive and be there as they have been. And I think that is we see that in a lot of places, and I think that that's why a lot of us get kind of jaded about going to a ski hill that we love, and it forms, it's crazy how skiing can be so a part of your identity, and the resort that you go to, it's your home, it's your second home. You can go there, you see your friends in the wintertime, that's your social scene. In the summertime, living in the mountains, there's rafting, fishing, climbing, kayaking, everything, biking, and everybody's kind of all over the place, and everybody's really busy, it's touristy. And then in the winter, it's like I see people that I haven't seen in 6 months. And I get to ski with them, and they're my buddies. And we go out and we go ski powder together, and then we have a beer at the end of the day. And so it becomes this reflection of who you are, and to lose that it hurts, painfully hurts. And I think that we have seen this around in a couple places where the relationship between the local community and the resort gets toxic, and it's just and it's hard to live with that. And I think it's, it goes both ways. Of course, it's not just the skiers' fault; they're trying to make money. But I think we can't discount the love that people have for skiing and their home place. And how do we protect that? How do we maintain that and make it sustainable so that that something that they experience now in 2017 is something that a kid will experience in 2030? How do you make that happen? I don't know. It's a really tough question. I think that's the challenge that we have.
It's interesting to think back in my life that because I've seen, things change over the 40 or 50 years that I've been in the ski industry. And I talked a little bit about people importing their lifestyle. And that was certainly part of it, is that what changed some of the resorts is that people, instead of joining into the local community, they brought their community with them. And then that changes everything else. I remember at Mammoth one time I was riding up Chair 3, which is up towards the top, and they were getting ready to put the gondola in. And the guy that I was riding with was saying, that's it, going downhill. The only way you should be able to get to the top of the cornice is to walk. You shouldn't be able to go up there. But now, people never remember what that used to be like. So the new people that are coming in, they've never seen it like I did. Whereas, let's see, I would have been 11. I couldn't get all the way to the top of the downhill, and I had to walk because I couldn't hold on to the rope tow that was taking us up there. And the fact that Niorsi won that downhill, I still remember this, at 11 years old, 62 years later, I still remember that Niorsi beat me because he was able to ride up on the front of the legs of his coach who held the rope tow up, and he went up there and he got up there, but I had to walk. I was fagged by the time I got to the top of the lift. So my memory is one of Mammoth Mountain with rope tows. Now we have people that remember it with just 9 chairlifts, and then 14. Now, was it 26, I think, if I remember right, that they have at Mammoth. I think that every generation is going to see something different, and I think that we have to respect that, and we have to realize that it's all going to change, that one person's reality is another person's hell. And all of a sudden, to see a place like Mammoth Mountain expand into a huge resort. When Dave McCoy used to take people up there in the back of his weasel, and there was a rope tow out in front of the little lodge when Roma would make lunch for everybody, because she knew everybody. And the box that you put your money in to go ski blew off, and Jill Kinlon had to run after it. All of those sorts of stories are a part of it. They become history. And I think that if we don't look to the future and realize that it's going to be better tomorrow than it is today, then we're really missing something. We have made something over at Sleeping Giant. We had a ski area that was shut down. It was shut down for 5 years, and now we're back up and running, and hopefully we're going to have our first dollars that are going to be positive coming into the thing. So it's going to be different, and things have to change. And I know that authenticity today is going to be very different than what the authenticity is going to be in, as you say, 2030 now. It's going to be a different authenticity at that time, because then the people in 2033 are going to go, boy, I remember the old days when we had this and we had that. So it's going to change. Get used to it. It's going to happen. Go with it, because it's best.
I would add that I think a lot of these community ski areas in their future will be community ownership. We've been working on a model, and we're just looking for a ski area owner that's willing to be the guinea pig. So if any of you are listening in and want to be a guinea pig, you know where to find us. But the reality is that if the user group has a vested interest in ownership or membership in it, they can help preserve, protect, and help to drive the future, because the user group, the skiers, know what's best for their mountain. So stay tuned. That's something that I think we'll see a lot more of. Really, there's Mad River Glen and a couple of other community-owned type ski areas, but they're few and far between, and I think we'll see more of that, especially when a lot of them reach that time when they're going to need $1 million or $2 million to replace their 50-year-old chair, and the owner isn't going to do it. So let's talk next about attracting millennials. So baby boomers, pre-boomers are leaving the sport much faster than millennials are entering it.
We're dying.
I'm sorry?
We're dying.
You're dying?
Yeah.
Okay.
The boomers are dying slowly but surely. I have a lot less friends now than I had before.
So not only are they dying, but the millennials they're risk averse. You know this. They're more sporadic, and they don't have brand loyalty. It's not like the older generation that sticks behind their brand through thick and thin. So, Carl, let's start with you. What can the industry as a whole, especially community skiers, do to be better at attracting your generation?
Yeah, so I was getting at earlier what basically marketers and economists are calling now, we're pushing or catalyzing this clean label trend where millennials are demanding from all types of brands that they be responsible socially and environmentally and be transparent about that. And we'll boycott any brand that deceives us. We'll find out eventually, so don't BS us. So in terms of that brand loyalty thing, we are becoming increasingly loyal to those companies that are evolving or new companies that are coming out with alternative products that are trying to do the right thing. So for skiers, it's just stick to your roots in that culture and community growth we talk about. Don't try and change that. But when you talk about sustainability, just be honest about the challenges that you have and what you are trying to do and what your goals are in the future. And don't try and call it anything else. Millennials are increasingly trying to get away from the term environmentalist that the previous generation had as a bad connotation to it, and we're trying to move past this eco-efficiency where doing less bad is good enough. So if you're going to talk about sustainability, talking about, okay, we did lighting retrofits and so that's saving us some money and a little bit less on carbon footprint, it's not going to be enough. You need to do bigger and better projects, and just because that's what we want to see. So don't try and just say that, look what we did, we changed some light bulbs and that's enough. So yeah, just be transparent and credible and honest what you're talking about. Also, millennials are going to be half of the workforce by 2020, and they want to work for companies that care about this stuff. I know a lot of my friends constantly complain about trying to find a job that they actually like, or a company that cares about them, and it is tough. But so for the ski industry, not only are they struggling to get millennials up to the mountain, but that's going to, where's your labor crew go if you can't get them to work for you? So definitely focusing on sustainability now and not trying to catch up to your competition in the future, that's going to be huge for attracting us to your ski area.
Isn't it all just Snapchat? Snap.
What about ours?
I think that a lot of ski areas are trying to do something, but I think you're also right. There's some smoke and mirrors in there that comes into the classification of BS, and that is probably going to hurt these companies the most. I think that from a small ski area point of view is that we have to do what we can, and we have to listen to our customers and what they want. Do they want to see us put solar arrays out there? We can't even put up a cell tower so that we could have a cell service at our ski area because we are that close to the national park. So there's going to be some realities in there as well that we will not be able to do. But at the same time, I think we need to do whatever we can to make sure that, number one, we aren't BSing anybody about what we are doing, and then try to do as much as we can. We happen to have the Schectman River right out in our front door. I don't know why in the future we couldn't have a little turbine that sits in that river, because that river runs all winter long, that could be producing electricity for us. I know our next door neighbor, Schectman Lodge, is going to put a turbine in Grinnell Creek, which is right in the back of their place, and they are thinking that they're going to be able to produce all of their electricity, and we're actually talking to them about possibly taking their overload in the off-season and using that at the ski area. So I think there are some inventive things that we can do in the future that's going to reduce our footprint, our environmental footprint. Should I not be using an enviro footprint? Would that be a better one?
No, it is one.
Okay, very good. So I've got to learn a little bit more here, so that we are going to try to reduce our footprint as much as we possibly can.
Okay, next up is diversity. It's pretty obvious that skiing is a white person's sport. I was recently in Switzerland and I was blown away by the amount of ethnicity. It's a hard one to say. In one ski area, I was in Engelberg, and there was an enormous amount of Indians that were there with group leaders. They even had Indian food in all their lodge restaurants, and they even had a website in Indian. And what do you guys think the ski industry could be doing to make it less white and more balanced?
I think that we just have to open ourselves up, just welcome people in. One of the biggest reasons why people don't start skiing, according to SIA, is that they feel like they don't have someone to go with. They had, just think about that for a second. We're talking about all these different factors of skiing, but one of the main reasons why people don't start skiing is because they don't have someone. And so I think just being open and welcoming to these different communities that live among us. In Jackson, Emily Coombs started the Doug Coombs Foundation a couple years ago, and it is one of the coolest things that I have seen in this industry. She is just creating so much positive change in that community by bringing in children from low-income families. The majority of them are Latinos who have like their own soccer league, they have their own communities, and she looked around and saw this inequality that was happening. It was like, well, all these people are living here, but none of them ski. So she started a foundation and to get these kids free lessons at Snow King, free lessons and free tickets at Snow King. And now when you go to Snow King, the little ski area in Jackson, you see these families out having a good time. And when you go out to ski functions, she makes a point of inviting these groups and these families to come. And so when you go to like a book signing or a ski movie premiere, you see these other families and they love it. Why wouldn't they? The kids, they get out there and they eat it up, and then they learn how to ski and they love it, and then they tell their parents, like, you should come try this. And so then they come out and they love it too. Of course they do. Skiing's fun. They just have to have a reason to go and someone to go with it, and someone to kind of reach out and say, come do this with us because it's fun.
A little bit more on the Doug Coombs Foundation. So they have done this for a few years in Jackson using Snow King, and they're ready to scale out to other communities. There are a lot of ski communities that have a Hispanic or other minority population close by that have been, I want to say alienated, but unwelcomed to date. And what Emily told me when we spoke was that they're now bringing them up and they're ending up in the workforce. So we know that a lot of skiers have a hard time attracting key employment. So this is not only good for the community, but it's good for the skiers, it's good for business, it's growing the sport, it's a super win-win. So kudos to Emily for making that happen.
Yeah, just to add to that, there are a lot of barriers to entry to start skiing. I mean, the cost of the tickets, getting to the mountain, and the equipment, and just some of those people have never been to the mountain. I mean, so there are a lot of nonprofits that get underprivileged youth and diversity of youth to the outdoors and their parents, up to the ski areas. I've worked with different organizations in San Diego with kids that didn't even know that they could go skiing or snowboarding 2 hours from their house. And so that's something we try and push with our members, is that they are working with either different local social services organizations or national nonprofits that work on this. But you have to lower that barrier to entry to get them hooked and keep supporting them through that so they actually learn and stick with it. So that's, open arms and then just reducing that barrier to entry. So.
I can tell you that I think that with our Episcopal Church money that we have $50,000 a year, which really reduces that barrier to get in, so that all of a sudden we have what is it called, Brain Dad or something? I can't remember exactly what the name of it is, but every fifth grader in this, basically the world, can come to Sleeping Giant and ski for free. But there's also a time when they can bring a friend right at the start of the season. They can bring a friend with them that might not be a skier, and we will make sure that they have equipment. They get one lesson, and we provide all of that free of charge. And then with our scholarship foundation, or our scholarship portion, which is another part of the $50,000, we provide a lesson, free yearly rentals, and a season's pass for the kids. Here, once again, I think if we can break down that barrier of entry, and then we have those kids that are having a great time, and they say, come on, try this with me, then they've got a friend to go with, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be something that we can do for 6 weeks and we're going to be success. It's only going to be successful in 2050 when the American ski team is led by Raul Rodriguez or something like that. That has come through the system and finally made it up to the top.
Thank you. So we'll close off what we had pre-prepared with predicting the future of community skiers. Then we'll open it up to questions, thoughts from the audience and the cyber world. So, Mr. Reveal, if you had to look into your crystal ball, you've been around the block a time or two or three, what do you see as the future of community skiers?
Well, I hope that they are going to continue. I hope that they are going to be supported by the local community. I think if we continue to provide different things, that might be a racing program on a particular day at the Cody High School, for instance. On Thursday, they come all the way up here to Red Lodge to train. If we could get to a point where we have enough money where we could open up an area of training for just them on Thursday, that would make us a more integral part of that particular group of skiers and racers in the Cody area. If we can continue to bring in the schools and we can create those kids that are going to come back for the rest of the time, so much the better. I think that the future really does look bright. I can see it because I think that the big resorts are going to price themselves out of my group, the group that I want to get to. Those people are looking so high, they don't even know that there's a mass of people down below, which is fine with me, because I will be very, very happy to take care of them. And I think that there is a way that we can do that with community support and also other organizations. We just got a grant in Cody from the Daniels Foundation in Denver for a $250,000, Sox, is that right? $250,000. And that is going to help our cross country. That's going to help the alpine skiing. It's going to help the soccer club. It's going to help the baseball. Who else was in there? The ice skating. So it's a whole series of athletic abilities that are in that particular grant that we, as the Yellowstone Recreation Foundation, put together for the rest of the community. So when they're going to be playing baseball next year, hopefully they're going to know that our board and our foundation went out and got the money for that scoreboard or that new set of boards at the hockey rink.
I'll just add that Sleeping Giant is one of about 22 nonprofit-owned ski areas in North America or in the U.S., but almost every ski area could form a foundation or nonprofit arm to help subsidize and sustain the for-profit entity. and not that many take advantage of it. By offering tax-deductible donations, you appeal to a different demographic in December that needs to either pay the government or have a tax write-off. So that model that you guys use can be applied to other community-level ski areas as at least a nonprofit arm to accentuate.
And since we're a little bit on the internet, we are right now helping Antelope Butte training it up and running, and we are willing to help anybody do what we've done, because I think we are going to see ourselves as a successful entity here financially, and we are going to be able to start giving back to the community that gave so much to us over these 7 or 8 years from the time that we came out of the grave, so to speak, in 2009 until today. And we want to help, we will help. We gave all of our financial information to Antelope Butte so that they would know what to expect and how to get through it, and we want to help anybody that's out there. So no matter where you are, I've had phone calls actually from as far away as Maine asking how did we actually do this, and what could we do, and what could they do, and how can they create the same sort of thing. So we want to help to do that as well.
It's very generous. The future.
The future, I think, for small skiers, I think it is positive. I think that the very serious concern is climate change, because a lot of these places are kind of lower elevation, and the difference between 1 degree might be just rain, or if any precipitation at all. And that's a very serious, huge concern in terms of just like season longevity and having enough snow to ski on. But I think that we have seen over the last several years, many communities, there have been several instances across the country where local communities have banded together to sort of revive their lost ski area, because they realized the value that it brings to their community, the amenity that it provides, and just have, it's almost like a park that that just brings so much to a community. So I think that's positive, and I think like the support that John talked about, I think that that's reciprocated by the community towards their ski areas.
Jamie, you and I like to equate it to the craft brew industry. I think they'll fill a niche there and continue to grow, and kind of with the sharing economy that's grown, I think if we just support each other, they'll have to keep alive. And also to share those best practices, and during rough years maybe lean on one another, as these huge season passes have been in the corporate world. You're starting to see more community skiers band together for one season pass so that you can go ride at other places if it's a bad winter, but also transitioning to year-round operations, and having more cultural and community events that will bring people up to the mountain and have a good time, even if there isn't that much snow during a drought year. So I think it's going to be positive. The community skiers need to adapt and work together for sure. And I think a lot of that will come from the people, though, that want to keep this skiing culture and community alive for generations to come. But we need community skiers, or else, I don't know, my grandkids will even care to ski. So, yeah.
Thank you.
At the start of this winter, there was a particular pattern of snow that happened between Wyoming and Montana, and it seemed like it came right over the top of Target, right over the top of Jackson Hole, and right over the top of Sleeping Giant. And our skiing at Sleeping Giant was actually better than what was here at Red Lodge. Now, we have an agreement with Red Lodge, is that any of their season pass holders can come over and ski for half price. Since we had a $36 ticket, they could come over and ski for 18 bucks, which is less than what they would probably spend for lunch at Red Lodge. And we did quite well with accepting them, and that deal was wonderful. And I think that's when you start banding together and creating other things. We have a similar relationship with White Pine Ski Area. We have this summer one. What's the one outside of Sheridan? I can never remember. Pardon? Yeah. Meadowlark. Yeah. And all of those, we have, with them, we have a 50-50 deal. So our people get 50% off and their people get 50% off. So it makes our season pass more valuable. At the same time, it makes theirs more valuable. And I think that's where we're going to go as well.
Some more reciprocity between the community skiers instead of this standalone, independent.
Correct.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for your predictions. Are there any thoughts or questions from the audience? Start with you.
I have a question. You guys haven't mentioned anything about backcountry skiing, and that's a huge part of the industry. I don't know, like, how a small ski area feels about, like, a huge, especially, like, for 20-something-year-olds, a ton of people who never skied growing up are getting really into backcountry skiing. They don't know anything about skiing culture, so they don't feel connected to a mountain like someone who grew up skiing with their family. Is there something that you guys are doing to, like, kind of address that, like whether it's education about avalanche safety, or maybe like having people understand more about like learning how to ski before actually going into the backcountry, anything like that?
We are doing two things. Number one, we are working with Northwest College, which is over in Powell, Wyoming, about 30 miles away from us. Well, 30 miles away from Cody. And we are doing part of their outdoor ed with the college is happening up at Sleeping Giant, where they use our day lodge. Since we aren't open on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they will come up and spend a couple of days, and it gives them a place where they can hang out or come back to if there is a problem. And then we are also, we tried to do it this past year, but it was not successful. We only had a few people sign up, but also doing avalanche courses so that we can educate not only the backcountry skier, but also the backcountry snowboarder or snowmobiler, so that they don't get themselves into an avalanche hazard and not realize and wind up at the bottom under 80 feet of snow. So that we have an educational part of that. But realistically, the ski area doesn't have a lot of things to do with the person that is going to go off the ski area boundary and ski outside, as long as they use our gates and go into the national forest, however they want to do it, that's fine with us. But there is not a lot of push, I guess I would say, to bring those people in to use the ski area other than as alpine skiers.
I'd point to Bridger Bowl as a ski area that when they put the Schectman slip, did I pronounce that right? They educated their pass holders on protocol, because you get people on top of Saddle Peak, uncontrolled area, overexposure. And then Matt's home mountain, Jackson, will open their boundaries, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 years ago. And how's that gone? We turned that on. It's probably a loaded question, but
Well, the skiing's great out there. I would say just like, as from like the relationship between small ski areas and backcountry skiing is the accessibility that small ski areas can provide to people to learn their skills on how to ski, become an efficient skier, and then progress to the backcountry. And what we see a lot in Jackson is people buy a season pass to Snow King for $300 versus $1,200 in the village, or $1,300, and ski the backcountry. And so I think there's a very good relationship there based on just accessibility for the sport, because if those ski areas go away and you don't have enough people kind of lose out on the opportunity to learn those kind of foundational skills as a skier, they're probably not going to become a backcountry skier.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to push it with our members because backcountry skiing, snowboarding, and in general, backcountry adventures and hiking and stuff has grown in popularity hugely. And so in transitioning to year-round operations in general, we're helping our members think of themselves as gateways to the backcountry. So a lot of them have direct access, like you can drive to the parking lot, and you can right from there go hike out or take a lift up and hike out to something that's incredible where there's a hut. So how can you take advantage of that and now have another revenue stream for your bottom line while also keeping people safe? So they're having free, avalanche courses, Abbey Beacon Grove parks, and looking into developing interpretive centers before people go out to the backcountry on different trails and what they should be doing, and working with local outfitters to do educational courses and so on. So we're definitely trying to push it as well because they're all worried about that risk. But also see the potential in encouraging that and using the ski area as a gateway to that. So.
And this was the first year that the Wasatch, the whole state of Utah did not have one avalanche fatality since they decades. So something must be working, or it was a very lucky year, which probably wasn't the case. So, yes.
What do you guys see as like the role of the terrain park in the future of the community ski area, particularly in terms of the younger generation?
Particularly
in terms of the younger generation.
So the question was, where are terrain parks in the whole mix, especially with the younger generation?
So I can speak to like how we look at it and sustainability and our criteria. We ask our members through different types of like safety and quality checks and the design of the terrain parks and the features that they use to push creativity and responsible progression in those terrain parks to get more and more youth engaged and not get hurt and bummed on it, you know, first day of the season. So I think that having a cool terrain park is definitely what's marketable about it, but having kind of a structure and a system, and there's a lot of companies now, and Cutter's Camp and stuff has been a really great resource for that, but I think terrain parks have a huge role in providing that progression. You've seen a lot of ski resorts kind of transition to terrain parks that aren't just like the hugest features, but maybe the most fun and creative, with different kind of like snow, surfy, skatey features and stuff like that I love personally. So I think that definitely has a big role in keeping the next generation up in the ski area, and it can be a more affordable way of building terrain parks and fun features than trying to have the most massive jump line or some huge high quality rail. Like we have a lot of members that work with upcycled and repurposed materials that they get for free, and they're just as effective and fun. So.
Does the older generation want to talk about getting jiggy?
Only just, I wish I had them when I was a kid, but it's my understanding that they're also really expensive. Just having the equipment available to push around all that snow and manufacture it and make sure that it's safe. You know, it requires a lot more staff, a lot more resources, stuff like that. But I think that, you know, it seems like I've seen some ski areas have, like, they go full on a terrain park and then they kind of move off of it since the last 10 years. I think those that do it well, do it really well, and then kind of ones that pretend, just kind of, you know, not really know how much authenticity in the question.
Yeah, Sleeping Giant is sort of in the sort of category for terrain parks. We have a beginning park because our niche that we're going after is the young family. Because we realize that just if you were in Cody, you can drive 48 miles to Sleeping Giant, or you can drive 65 miles, whatever it is, to Red Lodge. And this is a lot more fun. If you were 16 years old and you could get in the car and drive to Red Lodge, that's much cooler than driving up to Sleeping Giant where you learned how to ski and everybody knows you and so on and so forth, because I think that's a breakaway period in young people's lives, is when they're getting out of their parents' thumb and being overseen by all their friends yeah, I think it's sort of cool to go out someplace else. So we are really looking at terrain parks as just a beginning park, so that they will learn how to jump, they will learn how to ride a rail, they'll learn how to ride a box, they will know how terrain parks work. So whether it is a beginning jump or a more advanced jump, how to make sure that their landing is clear, and all the rules of the road is really for terrain parks. It's what we are teaching, realizing that when they get to be 16, they're going somewhere else, and if that's what they want to do, that's great. And it's the same thing we do with our racing program. We realize that when they get to be 15, 16 years old, they're probably going to be here at Red Lodge, working on with the more advanced techniques of racing and skiing and snowboard and freestyle as well. We started a freestyle group at the ski area this year, which was very successful because some of the kids just got fed up with waiting to take their turn on the race course. That it was really cool to go out and do a sort of a free ride type of an experience on the mountain and keep right on going. And so we've been fairly successful of at least starting But we realized that it's about like having a tube of toothpaste. You know, pretty soon it's going to run out. So you just want to realize that that's the reality, and these kids are going to move on. So we just want to teach them the basics and let them go.
And that really dovetails into what community skier is about, which are really facts, snowboard and skier factories and freedom theaters. So you're giving them the first tools so they can graduate into the big world. One other thing about the terrain parks being capitally intensive is some skiers have been known to partner with a sporting goods store or other sponsor that sponsors the terrain park. And, that's one way that expenses can be offset for the capital intensiveness of terrain parks.
But then you get into the problem of the Forest Service and advertising on national forest land, which you can do with major events. If you have a World Cup like we did in Aspen, we could have Cafe Lavazza with all of their ads all over the mountain. They sort of overlooked it at that time. But to have Coca-Cola out on our mountain would be poorly looked at from the National Forest. And I believe that. I think that when the corporate world gets out there and starts plastering its name all over the place, probably the best example is our President Trump. Everything basically is out there. You go around. I remember one day sitting in our office in Aspen, and we saw this great big huge tail go by on an airplane. And somebody said, "God, what is that?" And all of a sudden he turned the light on and said Trump up the back of the airplane. So, those sorts of things are, and I think certainly the millennial group look down on that, right? Very much so.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Thoughts? Things you'd like for us to cover? Stacy, no one checked in on that?
No, but I have raffle tickets.
Okay.
And I'm over here, and there's a question
from that old guy right
Yes, sir.
Because
Sauce.
I've been on the Forest League Giant since the onset of the new development, the biggest problem we've run into, and all the things you guys talk about are issues that we deal with. I have to tell you, the biggest single problem that we're going to have to do is deal with the federal government and the Forest Service if you're permitted on the forest. The idea of putting up panels for solar, you have to go through an entire process for that. Trying to get hydro, you got to go through all the process of Corps of Engineers and Fish and Wildlife, what effects it's going to have on the fish. So it's not a simple process. So we try to do what we can. The whole fight on the zip line, we looked at everything we could possibly do. The zip line was the one thing where we're in the air, we're not on the ground, it's not a big footprint, and it still took us almost 5 years to get it approved because of the concept of the grizzly bear or some other animal that we might be bothering, even though our zip line was between our two chairlifts, so everything was in the activity part of the ski area anyway. But it still took us 5 years, and during those 5 years, we were losing $250,000 a year. And if it hadn't been for the community to step up and cover those losses through grants, donations, and everything else, we wouldn't exist right now. If you're going to have a project that you can show is sustainable, it doesn't have a big footprint, you shouldn't have to go through a 5-year process. An example, we had logging done to get rid of all the beetle kill, and that's what opened up a lot of the mountain. But the loggers left all kinds of debris, left all the branches they cut off. So we spent years with volunteers building burn piles. And we would get all the Forest Service and say, look, you tell us you wanted to burn the piles, or you want to have the burn piles in the middle of the open areas. That's great, we'll put them there. But you need to come up and burn them. Because in the wintertime, those open areas are no runs. And it's a danger to the mountain. And they'd say, fine, we'll get up there. And in all the years I was putting together the groups that would volunteer to come up and build the burn piles, they never burned more than 3 or 4 piles. Finally, Vail got so tired of it, or I understand Vail, that they said, why can't we burn our own piles if we have people up at least know what they're doing? So 2 years ago, they finally approved it through the Forest Service, the Intermountain. So then Shoshone said, okay, we'll do it too. We burned 169 burn piles last year. They were all in the middle of runs. And when they got rid of them, all of a sudden, all these areas that were almost dangerous to ski turned into awesome powder runs. but it was all because we couldn't get cooperation through the Forest Service on things like that. So if you want sustainability or keep a mountain operating and be able to be viable, there's got to be efforts made by your groups to convince the federal government that skiing is such a natural experience that they should be working with us, not against us, to develop our skiers.
Yeah, and I think there's, last count, somewhere around 130 ski areas are on public land, mostly on the west coast, the western half of the United States, but definitely a barrier. When Carl was involved with the solar panels at Mount Ashland, that's on Forest Service land. How did you work that one?
So I agree, like, don't get me wrong, checks and balances are good, but to a certain degree it can be really damaging and render a project that had good intentions not viable. Something like that, where if you didn't have the community support for the funding, you wouldn't be able to do it. So that's a bigger question that needs to be answered another time with politics and that kind of stuff. In the Forest Service, often those departments are overworked and understaffed and they can't. Anyways, but with Mount Ashland, we considered that. We wanted to do a potentially larger renewable energy project that could have a bigger impact on the bottom line and also the carbon footprint. But we could only we'll work with their existing buildings, so we had to do a rooftop solar array, and it still is great, but at the end of the day, if we decided to do something on the ground or a different type of renewable energy project, the permitting process and basically the EIS, environmental impact statement process, would have rendered it not feasible. So then again, though, those checks and balances are good to a certain degree, but you do have to get creative with what's going to work for your ski area and what the political climate is locally and what you can do with the federal and state government. For instance, Diamond Peak in Tahoe, they're in Tahoe, and the rest of the skiers that have California have a much better, political climate for trying to do renewable energy stuff. Since Diamond Peak is an incline village in Nevada is terrible for solar and renewable energy right now, and that's going to change in about 8 years or so. But right now we're struggling to find a solution for them. We're getting really creative, and I'm hoping we're going to figure out something, but it is tough, and it shouldn't be that tough to try and find these solutions. So.
And maybe as these skiers are going out of business and the Forest Service starts losing the revenue base from them, maybe they'll see a different light. And, never going to happen.
The Forest Service has absolutely no idea what a public and is relationship to a private entity. When I ran Mont Saint Anne, it was actually put up by the government, and all of the revenue went into the general fund, and all the employees were on the expense side. The expense side never saw the revenue side. So when I got there, they had absolutely, when we did a budget, they didn't even know what it was about. These public employees, they'd never heard of money coming in. What? There's money coming in? I don't know anything about that. If they wanted a new snowcat, they just put it in their budget and bought a new snowcat. They never had to think about the fact that that snowcat has to make money somewhere along the way so that we can still make a profit. It just never dawned on them. And the Forest Service people that I work with have absolutely no clue what it's like to be under the gun every day to make money so that you can afford to do something else. They just are not going to see it. So don't even put your hat out there for that one. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
Well, one thing we did find, we brought in the supervisor. He had a different attitude. So it is an attitudinal issue. And all I'm trying to do is get the industry to maybe persuade the Forest Service people that there needs to be a positive attitude. Because as soon as the new supervisor came in with this idea as a multi-use, suddenly things that we were told, no, you can't do, they suddenly said, we don't know why you can't. And then we were able to start doing it. So it's an attitudinal change that we've got to deal with, but it's as pervasive as a lot of other things when it comes to ski areas in this part of the country that are on Forest Service land. The Forest Service people have got to appreciate the benefit it's providing to the community and to the forest, because we're cleaning. I mean, we have some good rangers come up there, and I took one on a tour, and I said, can we cut that tree down? He says, as good as you guys are on environmental issues, if you need to take a tree out, you take it out, you don't have to ask me anymore. So that's part of the situation, getting people up there that are skiers, understand the system, and are able to look at it and say, yeah, this will work. Instead of saying, no, but let me look it up and see maybe. You know, it's just a matter of, yeah, I think we can, but let's make sure. Attitude rather than no, but if I have time, I'll look it up and see if maybe. And that's my concern.
Valid. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen more success, whether it's collaboration with local stakeholders on both sides of the fence, or whether it is environmental groups or whatever, trying to find a compromise if there's an issue there. But the point is, if you get community support line and Forest Service or whoever's involved, and if you're in good standing already, like you kind of said there in that example, you'll have a much better time. So, whereas you see some ski resorts just totally cold hand, don't want to talk to anyone about it, they just want to have it done their way, good luck.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
All right. Doesn't look like anyone else has any questions, so I'll move to adjourn our first annual symposium, Community Skiers at Risk. I want to thank our panelists, Carl Kish, Matt Hansen, and Jon Reveal. And thank you all for tuning in and for being a part of this. And support your community skiers. They're a big part of the industry, and together we can make a positive difference and live happily ever after. Thank you, and good night from Red Lodge.